Andiana Foundation. This foundation is a non-for-profit research and public policy organization focused on peace, security, and development. I'm moderating today's webinar, which is a part of our Afghanistan and its regional landscape initiative. And I would like to warmly welcome all of you to this discussion on which we will explore the conflict and its escalation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and what does this escalation mean for both countries and for the entire region. Let me start by providing a little bit of context for our discussion today, and then I'll leave it to our esteemed panelists to further explore and assess the situation. Well, over the past several months, relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan have deteriorated to one of their lowest points in years. Escalating cross-border tensions, a surge of militant attacks inside Pakistan, and Islamabad's ongoing statement that the Afghan Taliban are providing sanctuary and support to the Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan, also known as the Pakistani Taliban, have brought the two neighbors into direct confrontation. On February 27th, Pakistan launched airstrike targeting Kabul, Kandahar, and Paktia of Afghanistan. The action as a response to surge and deadly attacks carried by TTP inside Pakistan. Pakistan alleges that these attacks, including an attack on the Shia mosque in Islamabad earlier in February, were supported by the Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan. The Afghan Taliban, however, reject Pakistan's accusations. The months of cross-border violence between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan ended in what Islamabad called it an open war. There is significant complexity and a lack of clarity surrounding this conflict, particularly in light of Pakistan's airstrikes on drug rehabilitation center in Kabul that resulted in a high number of civilian casualties. To discuss all this and the main causes of this conflict between the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani establishment, who have historically worked together, very closely together on many fronts, and to examine what has changed in this relationship, as well as what this escalating tension means for both the countries and their nations, we are fortunate to have an esteemed panel of experts with us today. We have Ms. Shinkai Karokhail, a former member of the Afghan parliament. Ms. Karokhail is a regular commentator on Afghanistan's geopolitics and its relationship with its neighbors. She is also a longtime advocate for human rights in Afghanistan. We are also joined by Dr. Malek Sitez, a professor of political science at Selenius University. Dr. Sitez is an experienced researcher in the fields of law and international relations and a political analyst who reports on Afghanistan and its regional relations for both national and international media. Next, we have Ms. Fawzia Ehsani with us today. Ms. Ehsani is a researcher specializing in civil aviation and state capacity in Afghanistan, and she is currently a PhD candidate at the University of York. She previously served as Director of Foreign Relations and Legal Affairs at the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation of Afghanistan. And finally, we are joined by Mr. Sheharyar Khan. Mr. Khan is an Executive Director at the National Dialogue Forum in Islamabad. He is a specialist in peace and conflict resolution and a very regular commentator on these subjects concerning the region. We are glad that all of you have joined us, and thank you so much for being with us in today's very important and timely discussion. Each panelist will have 10 minutes for introductory remarks in response to leading questions that we have. And following the first round, we will move to a more focused discussion with 2 rounds of specific questions directed to each panelist, and drawing from list below that we already shared with them, and audience questions. The webinar will conclude with a discussion in a way forward for de-escalating the conflict. We start with you, Ms. Karokhail. You have been following very closely these two countries' confrontation since this beginning, particularly started last year. And I have been hearing you in many platforms talking about the Afghanistan relationship with Pakistan and what are the main causes of this particular conflict. If you can please provide us some context about the main causes of this particular conflict. I would say tension and animosity, and what has triggered this hostility between these two countries, particularly considering the recent airstrikes from Pakistan to Afghanistan, and also the cross-border tension. The floor is yours, Ms. Karokhail.
Thank you very much, and very good morning and very good afternoon to every participant and also distinguished speaker. And thank you for inviting me, and let me speak about where does the conflict stand and what are the main interests of Pakistan and Afghanistan in this war. To understand the current Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict, we must move beyond surface level explanation of border tension and militancy. What we are witnessing today is, in many ways, the unintended consequences of a long-standing strategic doctrine, one that has fundamentally backfired. For decades, Pakistan pursued a policy often described as seeking a strategic depth in Afghanistan. The logic was clear. A friendly, aligned government in Kabul would provide security against external threat, limit Indian influence, and ensure a stable Western frontier. The Taliban for many years were seen as a central instrument in achieving these objectives. However, the reality that has emerged since the Taliban returned to power in 2021 is starkly different. Instead of becoming a compliant partner, the Taliban have acted as an independent and nationalist actor, reshaping the very assumption on which Pakistan's strategy was built. Today, Pakistan finds itself confronting a paradox. The very group it once supported is no longer serving its strategic interests in Afghanistan. In key areas, it's acting against them. From Islamabad perspective, this represents a profound security failure. From the Taliban perspective, however, the calculus is different. Ideological alignment, historical ties, and internal cohesion constraint limit their willingness to confront the TTP decisively. This divergence highlights a critical miscalculation. Non-state armed group once empowered do not remain controllable instrument of state policy. Second major area where expectations have collapsed is the Durand line. Pakistan anticipated that the Taliban, given their past dependence, would move forward at least tacit recognition of the border. Instead, the Taliban have openly resisted border fencing, effort challenge, and legitimacy of the line and framed it as a national issue. This is not merely symbolic. It reflects the Taliban need to assert domestic legitimacy and avoid appearing subordinate to any external power, including Pakistan. Third, Pakistan broader expectation of a compliant and aligned regime in Kabul has not materialized. Rather than functioning as a strategic ally, the Taliban leadership has demonstrated a consistent pattern of strategic autonomy. They engage with multiple regional actors, resist external pressure, and prioritize regime survival over alignment with any single state. And since Pakistan's strategic asset has transformed into a strategic liability. This transformation is now visible in the escalation of tension. Pakistan has increasingly resorted to cross-border airstrike and unilateral military action, framing them as a necessary measures of self-defense against the TTP. Yes, this action have produced a counterproductive effect. Instead of compiling compliance, they have strengthening nationalist narrative within Afghanistan, reinforce anti-Pakistan sentiment, and deepen the trust deficit between the two sides. We are therefore witnessing a classic case of policy blowback, where earlier strategies generate unintended and adverse consequences. At the deeper level, this situation underscores a broader lesson in international relations. The instrumentalization of non-state actors carries long-term risk that often outweigh short-term gain. The Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict today is not simply about militancy or borders. It is about the collapse of a strategic framework built on assumption of control, alignment, and dependency. The implications are significant. For Pakistan, continued reliance on unilateral military measures risk further destabilizing its western frontier without addressing the root cause of insecurity. For Afghanistan, the Taliban approach balancing ideological ties with claims of sovereignty risk international isolation while failing to prevent regional escalation. For civilians on both sides of the Durand line, the cost is immediate and severe: displacement, loss of life, and deepening humanitarian vulnerability. Then what is the way forward? First, there must be a recognition, particularly within Pakistan's strategic thinking, that the era of proxy-based influence in Afghanistan has effectively ended. Policy must shift from control to coexistence. I want to repeat, policy must shift from control to coexistence. Second, both sides need to establish a structured and sustained security dialogue focused specifically on the TTP issue and clear mechanism for accountability and verifications. Third, unilateral uses of force must be replaced by approaches grounded in international law, including respect for sovereignty and principles of necessity and proportionality. Finally, the international community has a role to play by encouraging both sides for responsible behavior, regional diplomacy, and conflict de-escalation. In conclusion, the current conflict is not an accident. It is the outcome of strategic choices made over decades. The expectation that Taliban would serve as a reliable proxy has not only failed, it has reversed. And until this reality is fully acknowledged, the cycle of mistrust, violence, and instability will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karokhail. I'll get back to you about Taliban as a reliable proxy and how the whole narrative has failed, actually. They were once friends, and Pakistan, according to different reports and historical information we have, has been the supporter of the Taliban. And now they are in direct confrontation. We will bring the India factor also into our discussion, Ms. Karokhail, at some point, that if that factor is playing any role in triggering this conflict and further hostile environment in the region. We will talk about that element as well. With that, we'll go to our next panelist, Dr. Malek Sitez. Dr. Sitez, you have done a lot of work, and you already so invested in this geopolitics of Afghanistan through your comments and commentaries and also writings. How do you see this conflict, particularly this direct confrontation, and more specific about the airstrikes that's happening and that are conducted by Pakistan and Afghanistan, and what the international law says about these airstrikes, or what exactly the framework is there that could oppose such airstrikes. If you could please enlighten us about this specific topic, particularly about airstrikes, and more broadly, your view about this conflict. The floor is yours, Dr. Sitez. And you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sakhi. Thank you, Andiana Foundation, for organizing this webinar. Thank you for the good question. I think Ms. Karokhail, she provided a lot of information about why Pakistan are interested into Afghanistan and why the conflict is becoming more and more fragile between two countries. For me, Pakistan is a very important country in the region, especially when it comes to Afghanistan, particularly in the past 50 years. During the Cold War, Pakistan helped to create jihadist groups in Afghanistan within the doctrine of Brzezinski and Carter. And Pakistan has played a very important role in Pakistanization of jihads and jihadists in Afghanistan. When the Mujahideen come to the power, the Pakistan role became also very important. During the civil war, the Pakistan intelligence service played a very important role in escalation of the war and also in bringing the actors not together in order to solve the problem. On the contrary, provided weapons and also a very destructive agenda for the situation in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, when the Taliban appeared to become a very important phenomena in Afghanistan, the doctrine of Bhutto and Nasrullah Babur, who were in the power in Pakistan, provided a lot of support for the Taliban. And when the Taliban come to the power in 96, the Pakistan government was the first government who recognized the first emirates of Taliban in Afghanistan. After the collapse of the emirate, the first emirate period, and the creation of republic in Afghanistan, the leaders of the Taliban found themselves in a safe area of the borders between Afghanistan and Pakistan, got a lot of support from Pakistan intelligence service. During this period of time, the jihadist groups, especially the Haqqani network, has created a lot of challenges for the government of Afghanistan and for the international community involved in Afghanistan. Even the Haqqani network became the most dangerous terrorist organization organizing sophisticated operations inside Afghanistan, even closest to embassy of the United States. In 2007, the Pakistani Taliban organized themselves within a network, so-called TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. TTP was a copy, a version of Afghan Taliban in Pakistan. So during this period, the TTP has got a lot of support from Taliban, and the Afghan Taliban provided safe garden for TTP strategically and also ideologically, because TTP became a kind of ideological strengthening for Talibanism in the region. When the American withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Taliban came to the power, the first government who welcomed such a great difference or achievements for the Talibanism in the region was the government of Pakistan. The leader of intelligence service of Pakistan traveled to Kabul and provided a lot of support for Afghan Taliban, and even celebrated together with them and called such a disaster for people of Afghanistan as a national victory for people of Afghanistan, and even he called it as a big celebration for the national security of Pakistan. Later on, when TTP became more active in the areas of both northern and western Waziristan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that the problem appeared between Pakistan and Afghanistan. What I'm trying to say that the Taliban is a kind of ideological, strategic doctrine of Pakistanization in Afghanistan. So meanwhile, when the Taliban come to the power, and TTP got a lot of dynamism inside Pakistan, then the government of Pakistan realized that such a collaboration between TTP and Taliban in Afghanistan will be the greatest threat for the national security of Pakistan. Then Pakistan tried to pressure the Taliban to talk about it with TTP. But the Afghan Taliban never accepted, and not even accepted, then tried to provide more support for TTP. Even the leaders of TTP found themselves in a safe areas of Kabul and different provinces of Afghanistan. It was one of the main, actually, reason why the government of Pakistan, who were very demanding from Taliban, and they had the right to be too demanding, because they have done a lot for the Taliban in order to be the main actors in the power, but the Taliban didn't listen to them. And it became a more strategic disagreement between Kabul in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. So that was one of the greatest reason why Pakistan became very angry, and meanwhile very active in pressuring the Kabul regime. As Ms. Karokhail mentioned, here, during this period of time, in a very delicate period of time, the Indian became more active in Kabul. They have opened their embassy in Kabul. They have invited the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Taliban to Delhi, and some main political and financial and strategic leaders of Taliban have been invited to New Delhi in order to talk to them about their collaboration. And this is not acceptable at all for Pakistan. It is a strategic depth for Pakistan, and Pakistan never will receive such an action. And the third point, which also been mentioned by Ms. Karokhail, that was about the Durand Line, which play an important role between social development, even economic development between two countries. The Pakistan will never accept a regime like Taliban who are against the recognition of the Durand Line, And as all governments of Afghanistan never recognized this line, however, the Pakistan want to have a government in Kabul who at least don't talk about it. So that's a very delicate issue. These three elements are the most actually how we call it significant reasons why Taliban, why Pakistan are bombing Afghanistan.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Finally,
Yeah,
yes.
I'll get back to you about that, particularly the international norms and international frameworks say about zero strikes. I'll get back to you then on that particular question. Thank you so much for providing again a context of this war and what triggers this war and all the other factors around it. Particularly the India factor that you highlighted as well, which some argue that is also one of the main factors of further hostility between these two countries. And then we will of course get back to more specification about that. To you, Mr. Khan, there is a lot of also discussion or arguments about the nature of this war or the nature of conflict between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan. Some say that, well, it is not that real. This conflict is not that real. I mean, Taliban are still playing as a implementer of a strategic depth for Pakistan establishment. So, how do you see the situation in Islamabad? Is this conflict a real conflict? Will it be like this, or no? It's just there are other factors that could that are triggering this conflict, not the nature of the Afghan Taliban itself. So if you can take us there and let us know exactly what is, first of all, what are your thoughts, of course, and what you see on the ground in Islamabad about this, and why, if the conflict is real, if this confrontation is really real that we have seen through airstrikes, through direct violence, it seems very real. Why has their strategic partnership, the two act as a strategic partnership, shifted into confrontation? They used to be friends and supporter of each other at some point, and now they are in direct confrontation. If you can take us there, please. The floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
so much for thank you so much for giving me time, Dr. Nilofar. And I can tell you with a lot of surety and certainty that this conflict is very, very real. This conflict is posed to escalate for sure. And a lot has been said about the historical reasons why this conflict is where we are today, and the webinar we are having now discussing all of that. I would want to give you some reasons on why this conflict has reached this point, uh, given the change of government and the Taliban regime taking over since 2021. Um, Pakistan basically thought, and maybe this was analysis which was not very accurate on Pakistan's side, that when TTA takes over in Afghanistan, they would basically take care of some legitimate concerns, security concerns of Pakistan, in the light of taking over or taking care of the TTP issue. And this TTP issue did not start in 2021. Pakistan had been launched various military operations in various parts of Pakistan targeting TTP. And the last one, which was called Zarbul Azab, basically pushed the TTP into Afghanistan territory. And after 2021, Pakistan was expecting the Afghan Taliban to basically take care of Pakistan's, legitimate demands, legitimate security concerns, and that did not come to be. TTP always maintained in front of the international community, and this narrative was emerging that TTP only targets law enforcement agencies, they only target the military, and they want a certain section or geographical section of Pakistan where they want to implement their version of Sharia law. Now, in 2026 alone, and I will try to give you the gravity of the situation that Pakistan is facing, And I will not talk about deaths in military and law enforcement. Over 130 civilians in the first 3 months of 2026 were killed by TTP and in other terrorist attacks. That's around 53 civilians a month. And in the whole of 2025, approximately 400 Pakistani civilians were killed by terrorist organizations, terrorist attacks that were facilitated from across the border in Afghanistan. Now, this time around, I would basically call this an escalation spiral when Pakistan basically um, tried to basically take this whole conflict to Afghanistan side and put costs on the Afghan Taliban regime. Now, this basically started from border incidents and then one terrorist attack in the outskirts of Islamabad very recently on a Shia mosque, which resulted in the killing of around 35 civilians, and then attacks in Bannu, attacks in a cadet college in Vana, in which five terrorists were killed. And that could have been a major incident. It could have been an incident comparable to the APS attack, in which TTP killed over 156 children in Peshawar. So Pakistan retaliated by attacking alleged TTP camps and alleged, I'm trying to be a bit more neutral. But in retaliation, the Taliban attacked Pakistani posts in around 52 locations, and then Pakistan launched this operation with strikes deep into Afghanistan, and Pakistan also attacked Kabul and Kandahar as well. Now, the areas, Nangarhar, Paktika, Host, historically, that's what Pakistan has been saying, where a lot of TTP camps are situated. The UN reports are also pointing towards these locations. And this is where Pakistan launched the airstrikes. And according to Pakistan, their defense minister, right now we are in an open war with Afghanistan. Again, the airstrikes have been compounded by drone strikes, mortar fires, and like cross-border incursions as well. Now, this is how do we reach this spot? And like a lot of like speakers, especially the first speaker, has also said that there's needs to be a lot of diplomacy, and this issue should be resolved by diplomatic channels. Now, the very recent diplomatic talks, first initiated by Qatar, and then Istanbul, and then it also moved to Saudis as well. And what was the key demands that were emerging from these talks? So these are very important because these demands from Pakistan's side and the response from the Afghan Taliban will give you a picture of where we are standing right now. One, Pakistan is asking for verifiable actions against the TTP and other cross-border militants. And under the umbrella of TTP, there are a lot of other terrorist organizations operating as well. So Pakistan wants Afghanistan to take clear, verifiable, and effective action against these fighters, their leaders, and their infrastructure in Afghanistan soil, and also sureties that this the Afghan territory will not be used for planning, launching, or sheltering attacks against Pakistan. They also want Afghan Taliban to hand over or take action against the senior leadership of the TTP. Another important demand that Pakistan wants the Afghan Taliban to formally declare TTP as a terrorist organization. And they also ask them to denounce them in a fatwa by the Taliban's supreme leader. This demand was also rejected by the Taliban. Then the joint mechanism that Pakistan suggested, and Qatar and Turkey, because they were mediating, they were also expected to be guarantors. And I even today had meetings with the key decision makers in Islamabad, and they said even Qatar and Turkey are very reluctant on being the guarantors for Taliban because they don't find them very trustworthy. And in the end, Islamabad asked for all of these assurities to be written, not verbal commitments. And obviously, this will basically result in ceasefire and like the opening of the border. Pakistan had already closed their border when these talks were taking place. And this would basically lead to a ceasefire. This would open the border crossings as well. The trade would also resume. But once the Afghan Taliban are okay and they are accepting these points from the Pakistan side. Now, in return, why these talks collapsed? One, the Taliban delegation called the demands unrealistic. unreasonable, impractical, and they basically frame TTP as Pakistan's internal problem. Now, in a lot of public debates, the Afghan Taliban have accepted that the TTP are on their soil, and they basically called them refugees. That we have refugees from Pakistan side, and we are willing to relocate them from the eastern side to the western side of Afghanistan. So, who are exactly these refugees that they're talking about? And then they asked Pakistan to stop all airstrikes, any operations, and respect Pakistan's sovereignty. When it comes to the Durand line or the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, they don't accept that at all. They basically call it the remnant of British imperialism. And for example, if there is no Durand line, if they don't accept the border, then all the area, including Peshawar, uh, comes under their rule. That's what they basically think. And they also rejected any written agreements with Pakistan, and they said any deal that needs to be made will be verbal in nature. So this deadlock, this existed in October 2025. It went on till November, and these terrorist attacks that I'm talking about in Islamabad, in Bannu, in the bordering areas of Pakistan, they came back to back. And that is when Pakistan decided to basically take this conflict to the Afghanistan side and basically make this whole conflict costly for the Afghanistan regime. Now, after all of these attacks that we were and the airstrikes, and these attacks were mainly on Afghanistan's brigades, core headquarters, intelligence headquarters, in a lot of weapon depots as well, drone centers as well. Interestingly enough, I'm sure other speakers would know more, but Taliban are also trying to develop some sort of drone capability, and that they have been using against Pakistan as well, but it seems to be very rudimentary in nature right now. A temporary pause was basically in place. This was brokered again by the Qatar, Turkey, and also from China right now.
If you just leave the diplomatic responses at the end as a solution or way forward, I think that would be great. So if I make I can stop. Can I stop you here and then move forward, and then we will come back to you about the diplomatic interventions. Though there are lots of counter argument on a couple of points that you have raised, Mr. Khan, about the targeted airstrikes. Then we have seen in the last few attacks that civilians were part of civilian casualties at very high rate. And some not actually, some very specific places were targeted where civilians were the main casualties in those particular airstrikes. So we will get back to that, and also the whole thing about when we are talking about the causes of this particular confrontation or tension or conflict, whatever you want to name it. I think there was, and you may agree with us also, Mr. Khan, that Pakistan has been the cause of this problem that it faces today and Afghanistan faces today as well, of trusting a group like the Taliban overall. I mean, initially using Taliban as nurturing Taliban, giving birth to Taliban, and then supporting Taliban. A group which is of course connected to transnational terror group, and now the expectation that you mentioned from Afghan Taliban to cut ties with transnational terror group, to cut ties with TTP. I think it is an unrealistic expectation, knowing the nature of Afghan Taliban. And I think Pakistan also knows that very well, because Pakistan is part of as Dr. Sitez mentioned, also as the main supporter of this jihadist group in the region, particularly in Afghanistan. So this kind of expectation now, I think we should talk at the end whether it is realistic to have from the Afghan Taliban, who are connected to, according to different UN reports, who are still connected to transnational terror group, who have, of course, close tie with TTP. So where does expectation, will it be possible at least, or realistic at this point? We'll get back to this point. To you, Ms. Ehsani. You have worked at the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation of Afghanistan, and your research also currently is closely linked to this particular field. Could you please provide us an overview of Afghanistan's airspace and the Taliban's capacity to manage or to respond to these airstrikes. If you can take us specific to this topic, since the causes of the war and everything else have been discussed in depth with our other panelists. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to this timely webinar. Actually, I would like only focus on the technical aspects. First, just to briefly explain what aerospace management is, it's basically about organizing how the sky is used so that different users like commercial planes, military aircraft, or drones can operate safely and not interfere with each other. Normally, based on the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, this is managed by country's civil aviation authority, working very close with the military sectors of any state or countries. And now to answer the question, no, actually the Taliban do not really have control over Afghanistan airspace. First, they lack the capacity and knowledge to manage it properly. Second, they cannot detect aircrafts, the hostile aircraft. And third, they cannot defend their airspace. From my own research and my experience, this problem actually goes back much earlier. I interviewed 14 Afghan and international experts on the civil aviation sector, which they were engaged in civil aviation of Afghanistan. And what came out very clearly is that the capacity development efforts between 2001 and 2021 were not sustainable. There were several reasons that why, after a huge investment in Afghanistan civil aviation sector for 20 years, all airports collapsed. Up until there were several reasons, but I would like just mention one of the main and major reason that why those airports collapsed and why after 20 years investment, there were not any capable Afghans to manage airspace and air services, which led to the collapsing of airports. Well, up until 2014, Afghanistan's airspace was managed by NATO contractor. After that, the same contractor is state-owned, but was paid by Afghan government, from the national budget. The whole 20 years, the Afghans were completely sidelined, and just a NATO contractor managed airspace and air services. However, sometimes they say that we officially take over, the NATO contractor take over the responsibility to Afghans, but it's never happened, honestly, until 2021. During this whole period, they didn't get real opportunities to Afghans to learn or take over. So the number of trained and qualified personnel remained very limited. When the Taliban took power, many of those few experts had already left or were evacuated by international organizations or foreign countries. So there simply wasn't enough expertise to keep the system running, and the airports effectively collapsed, as I mentioned earlier. For about 9 months, I think, Afghanistan airspace was almost completely inactive. Eventually, because overflight revenue is important, the Taliban brought in an external company from the UAE to handle some air services, but their role is quite limited. It focused on basic operation rather than full airspace management. As a result, today, Afghanistan still doesn't have a proper airspace management system. Instead, the airspace is being handled through a kind of contingency plan involving neighboring countries. And at the same time, Afghanistan lacks key infrastructures like radar systems to detect and track hostile aircraft. Because, sometimes some people might ask, excuse me, what's happening on the Pakistani military aircraft come to Kabul or targeted cities, they bombed and then they go back, and why nobody inform and nobody take any action? well, actually, they do not have any radar systems to detect or track those aircrafts. So in reality, if foreign aircraft enter Afghanistan airspace, there is very limited ability to monitor them. That creates serious risk, especially since the Afghanistan airspace is not closed like another country like Iran, for instance, the airspace is closed. And especially, since the commercial flights are still operating, if military aircraft enter the same airspace without proper coordination, it could lead to a very serious, dangerous situation. So the issue here is not just about control. It's really about capacity at the moment. The Taliban simply do not have the system, the expertise, or the operational ability to manage their own airspace. In addition, the lack of capability to detect or track foreign or military aircraft entering their airspace, and they also do not have any air defense system in place. This makes it even more challenging to prevent unauthorized entries and keep the airspace secure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll get back to you about what has to be done now in terms of all this lack of capabilities that you have highlighted, Ms. Ehsani, and of course, Taliban has to respond, or they are planning to respond, or they have responded before. But what are the other tactics that they have been using in light of all these incapabilities to protect the country? Ms. Karokhail, back to you. Let's talk a little bit about the India factor. There was a high level of coziness between India and Afghan Taliban last year, and they were all over the news, and the analysts were talking about the factors behind that coziness. The Indians invited Afghan Taliban authorities to Delhi, and there was a very warm welcome from Indians to the Afghan Taliban, and the diplomatic relationship, the opening of the embassy. And also now we have heard that India has reopened, of course, at the end of last year, the visas for Afghans. So there are all kind of diplomatic engagement between Indian government and the Afghan Taliban authorities in Afghanistan. What did it have any role in this particular tension? Or did that kind of relationship or that coziness between Indians and Afghan Taliban had to do anything, or still have to do anything, with this particular series of airstrikes and indirect tension between Afghanistan and India? The floor is yours. Sorry, Afghanistan and Pakistan. The floor is yours.
I think, well, India doesn't have a direct role starting this airstrike on Afghanistan, but definitely Pakistan has a huge concern. One of the concerns Pakistan throughout this 5 decades invest on proxy to control Indian influence on certain group inside Afghanistan. They might be used against Pakistan stability. So I think what's going on recently among Pakistan and Taliban, India took full advantage of that. They rebuilt the relation. They want to reopen their diplomatic agency, starting issuing visa, assist Afghanistan with humanitarian assistance. So many other excuses. At least I think India has its own concern that all those groups or extremists might be used against India's stability. So to avoid or reduce that kind of risks, want to have like a relation with the Taliban, at least to have a control over this kind of concern. But Pakistan definitely, as I mentioned in my speech, absolutely it was like a strategic failure for them, that how the Taliban, the most extremist religious group, which they invest since mid-80s turned to be a friend with India once again, which raises concern among Pakistan security doctrine. So it could be a trigger from Pakistan for Pakistani this relation, but India doesn't have like a direct influence or have an affair with this kind of creating conflict between two countries.
Thank you. Dr. Sitez, to you, please. If you can take us to the to that international frameworks or international norms or international laws. If this particular conflict escalates and escalate in the extent that there would be civilian casualties at high rate, what would the international law say? Or do you think any intervention from that aspect?
Thank you. Yes, good question. And I'm sorry that I didn't respond to this question before, because I tried to make the issue more, we call it systematic. So there are four elements based on international relations and international law that during the Pakistan intervention to Afghanistan have been violated. Let me start from the international relation principles. The first very important principle amongst all international community is the prohibition of use of force. This principle is based according to Article 2.2 of the United Nations Charter. And this principle means that the states should not use force when or if they have any possibility of diplomatic solution. The principle number 2 is non-intervention. This principle is based on Article 51 of the United Nations. It means that the governments should not intervene any other governments against their national interest. The national interest means that non-governments will ask about the intervention, shouldn't be violated this principle. Let me bring also two very important points according to international law. The international law has two very important points, which is the first one emphasized also by the by Vienna Convention, which is the respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. And according to this convention, the states should respect, especially neighboring countries, should respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of their neighboring countries and try to be constructive in making diplomacy instead of any kind of military intervention. I would like to emphasize military intervention, because the military intervention, according to this convention, is the worst kind of intervention according to the international law. And finally, this war and the intervention of military intervention of Pakistan into Afghanistan is against the international principles of humanitarian law. Based on Convention 4 of Geneva Convention 1949, Article 27, 32, and 33, all of them are emphasizing that all states should respect the civilians during their operation, if there is any military operation. So they should respect the civilians, especially the hospitals, the schools, in the area where the civilians are situated. So all these four principles, two from the international relations and two from the international law, are actually badly violated by Pakistan.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for that overview. Very helpful, Dr. Stes, particularly that discussion, actually the controversies came up after the airstrike in Kabul that targeted civilians recently by attacking this drug rehabilitation center, which a large number of innocent civilians were part of that casualty.
Do you want me bring some solution for it, or shall I wait for that?
I'll come back to the last round. We have 3 rounds. The third round will purely focus on the solutions and way forward, Dr. Sitez. Thank you. And back to you, Mr. Khan. The proxy wars is something that Afghanistan has experienced through many years, and experienced with this particular notion of being a proxy or involved in the proxy wars. Where do you see this India elements or India factor now? There of course there's a term called in international relations extra-state war. An extra-state war is when the countries fight their war in the third country. And that is what international relation teaches us, that when countries don't want a war in their own country and they don't want destruction of their own infrastructure, they go to target a third country to fight their war there. And we have seen in case of India and Pakistan in relation to Afghanistan that proxy notion was there always. It always played a role in Afghanistan from 1980 onwards. We have seen that proxy element there. How do you see now? Do you think that this is a start of a new proxy war in Afghanistan? Or no, it would be resolved through a kind of a diplomatic intervention, and particularly the India factor. And it's broad. If the war escalates, what is the broader implications in the region? How do you see that aspect also? Please enlighten us in that regard.
So, Dr. Nilofar, when it comes to the whole proxy discussion that you pointed towards, the whole India factor has always been there. It was there at the time of the Republic as well. Pakistan consistently said that to even its American counterparts, that there are a lot of support from the India side to various terrorist organizations in Pakistan. A lot of Indian retired intelligence operatives who are now public speakers, they openly say that they are supporting the BLA in Balochistan. Pakistan has also caught one naval officer, and that also came into the news. Pakistan still has the Kulbhushan Yadav, who was basically operating in the border areas of Balochistan and Iran. So whole proxy discussion is already there. Now, this time around, the Taliban hosting the Taliban in New Delhi, that could have been India's approach to spite Pakistan. I don't know what type of cooperation is there, but the fact that there is some sort of drone capability that Taliban are trying to develop, obviously they don't probably have the funds to basically establish an air force or air deterrence. So that is a low cost intervention that they want to go towards, and there are reasons to believe that they could get support from enemies of Pakistan, the hostile agencies that Pakistan views, and obviously India's role will be looked at through that lens. Now, where is this conflict going? This conflict seems to be escalating. Right now, there is a ceasefire, and even today I had a discussion with the key stakeholders before this webinar. So right now, from Pakistan's side, the ceasefire seems to be holding right now. Obviously, there are some cross-border clashes. There are some ceasefire violations, but overall, Pakistan hasn't started the operation again. According to Pakistan's government and Pakistani establishment, there is one firm stance that is emerging, that the current regime in Afghanistan as long as it's there, it will always be hostile, and there will be no concessions given to Pakistan when it comes to the whole TTP issue. So that understanding is now seeping into the political government, it's seeping into the military establishment, and it is seeping into all stakeholders in Pakistan. Now, will this result in a regime change? That's a very different and very vague future that we cannot predict right now. But as of right now, for all essential purposes, Pakistan is very clear, and they have given these demands even to the Chinese. There is a back channel right now between Pakistan and China. China is trying to mediate, but again, from the Chinese side as well, there are a lot of concerns when it comes to ETIM and TIP. And now, very recently, a lot of very credible think tanks in China are also saying that China has offered Taliban a lot of concessions, a lot of infrastructure investments as well, in return for clamping down on ETIM or TIP or handing over their leadership. And Taliban have also refused the Chinese as well. So this consensus is also emerging. When it comes to Pakistan,
The consensus on change of regime in Afghanistan?
not overtly, but these discussions are taking place. Now, what kind of intervention? Right now, if there is, for example, Afghanistan would basically retaliate in terms of irregular warfare, but because obviously Pakistan military has conventional dominance over the Afghan Taliban. Now, if there is a big terrorist incident that is traced back to Afghanistan soil, Pakistan will escalate it, and I see a lot of escalation coming in the future right now. Right now, a lot of attention is on the Iran issue. So Pakistan doesn't want to escalate it too much because it's projecting itself as a mediator, and a lot of international stakeholders are coming to Islamabad, and we don't want to basically show that there is some sort of insecurity in this region. But if there is any irregular terrorist incident traced back, the ceasefire will definitely be over. And attacking or airstrikes in Kabul or Kandahar, there was a airstrike symbolic very close to the supreme leader's residence in Kandahar. That was also a message given by the Pakistani government that this could escalate. And if I have to give an analysis for the next 6 months, I see a lot of escalation in the coming future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Ms. Ehsani, you said clearly that Taliban are incapable of controlling and managing the airspace of Afghanistan. So what about the borders? Are Taliban capable of protecting the borders if the airspace is not in their control and there are lack of capabilities? What about the borders? And they are known for having their strong foothold in different parts of the country. And don't you think that plays a role, or what are your analysis on this? And you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, the Taliban do not really have the capability to defend and control even Afghanistan borders in a conventional sense. Even the Taliban themselves have acknowledged the limits of control. In a recent crisis watch report, I think, they noted that the border is highly porous and that neither side can fully prevent cross-border movement. When they accusing supporting TTP in their soil, they say that neither side can, protect or control cross borders. They even pointed out that Pakistan, despite having advanced surveillance and fencing, has struggled to stop infiltration. That already tells us something important about the structural challenge. But beyond that, the real issue is the capability gap. If we compare the two militaries, the difference is quite stark. According to Global Firepower Index, based on the military strength, Pakistan ranks 14 globally, while Afghanistan ranks 121, I think. Pakistan has a well-established professional military with a strong recruitment, institutional depth, and ongoing investment, especially with support from partners like China. It has modern air and naval forces, and importantly, a nuclear deterrent. In contrast, the Taliban's forces are much more limited. They rely largely on light infantry and have struggled to maintain and operate the more advanced equipment they inherited in 2021. Without international recognition, they also lack access to training, spare parts, and modernizing pathway. I mean, according to the lack of capability to control borders, they are in lack of capability. They are in lack of, have adequate equipment. I mean, the military equipment. For instance, the air power is a key example. For instance, Pakistan has a large and active air forces, while Afghanistan effectively has no function in air combat capability. That means the Taliban have a very limited ability to monitor, deter, or respond to aerial threats, or even the ground threats. For instance, I've been reading a news in the Reuters that mentioned that Pakistan fielded 465 combat aircraft and over 260 helicopters, covering attacks, transport, and multi-role mission. Afghanistan, by contrast, has no fighter jets and only a small air fleet, at least 6 aircraft and 23 helicopters, though it's unclear how many are operational. So overall, this is not just about numbers, it's about a structure, technology, and sustainability. The Taliban may be able to control territory, maybe internally, that I'm in doubt with that one as well. But when it comes to defending borders against a capable states actor, their capacity is very, very limited.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for putting a very in-depth analysis about the causes of this particular confrontation and tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and also the main factors that has given birth to this particular confrontation and the reasons for the escalation. But everything you mentioned, I think the points that I have noted, the incapability of Afghan Taliban, Pakistan intention to further escalate or attacks, the geopolitical development in the region, particularly with Iran factor, with India factor, the nature of Taliban connectivity with TTP and transnational terror group, and the most important thing, the Taliban as itself, the Afghan Taliban, the nature of it, the characteristics of it, and the fact that it is connected, and they are connected to this TTP and larger transnational terror group. What do you suggest? What are your particular recommendations or analysis about the solutions to tackle some of the issues you all have highlighted, and also to reduce the level of armed conflict? I think conflict would be there. The conflict has different shape and forms. The conflict will be there for a long time, but at least to reduce the nature of the armed conflict between the two states, and the most important thing, to mitigate or prevent the civilian casualties. The innocent people should not die and should not be attacked and die in such conflict. And overall, what has to be done to bring stability and security for both the countries and for the region, in light of what you have explained? I give the floor to you, Ms. Karokhail, to share your final thoughts about the way forward, please.
Thank you. But first thing which I want to mention that Pakistan, we know that it's a very military is very powerful, but doesn't have a legitimate reason to attack on Afghanistan for the purpose which Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan are not responsible. Pakistan should remember they should respect the two principle, international principle on attacking a military attack on another country is one of the is distinction and another proportionality. And they violate both this principle, and one day Pakistan military and especially the generals will be accountable to that violation and killing the civilian in Afghanistan. It doesn't mean Pakistan has a strong military so they can attack on Afghanistan the way they want. Definitely, there is international law, there is customary law that they have to respect and come, because they cannot reach what they are asking for. We know that there must be multiple reasons behind this attack, which is really, we are still not very much clear what's the real cause of this attack. It is really because of the TTP. The TTP already made by Pakistan while they want to destabilize Afghanistan and strengthening the military power of TTA to destabilize Afghanistan and fight against the Islamic Republic. Whether this attack because of coordinating with America and while they're attacking Iran, and how to make Afghanistan busy with this kind of imposed war, or maybe how to avoid not to attack Iran while they're attacking the Saudi Arabia, while they have like a strategic military and security strategic agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, or maybe that the big number of population, which Shia population Pakistan has after Iran, not to support Iran while American attacking. So there must be multiple reasons behind this kind of attack. Mr. Sheharyar says so many things, all there will be escalation because of this, because of that. Well, we, during the 20 years of Islamic Republic, Afghanistan always requests the Pakistan military to stop Taliban. Their presence was there. You know, they are accusing now Afghanistan. So they are facing the same situation. I think I already mentioned about both countries should go for a constructive dialogue and with the interference or the support of international friends to go for the constructive dialogue and see how they can avoid this kind of escalation of conflict in this, and how to reach an agreement to stop supporting any proxy group, whether it's from Afghanistan side or Pakistan. Even the Pakistan military is behind that proxy group, whether it's TTA or TTP. They should actually be responsible. So accusing Afghanistan for that, I think, is not the right excuse. And I think this is the time that Pakistan military dictatorship should rethink about their strategies, regional strategy, and stop investing further on the proxy. But I think, as I mentioned, they should think about coexistence, you know, with their neighbors, solving any issue with a neighboring country through very constructive diplomacy, not through airstrike. Well, definitely we don't have that capacity or capability to protect the country, but doesn't mean they can target whenever they want. They also Pakistan has to respect Afghanistan's sovereignty and also respect the international humanitarian law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Karokhail. Very constructive points. Dr. Sitez, to you, please.
Okay. I think one of the questions that you referred to as why diplomacy is not working. Let me explain why diplomacy is weak between Afghanistan and Pakistan. I think we need to know the reasons behind that. That will help us a lot to go forward and think about the future. I believe diplomacy never work when the international law, international norms are not important for many countries. Today, international rules, international law, and global order are becoming less important. Many countries do not follow these rules seriously anymore. This is one of the reasons that diplomacy is not working effectively. The second point is many wars around the world right now in the Middle East. We are facing serious conflicts in war, and the war between Russia and Ukraine is also badly damages the important role of the countries in our region, because they are very busy with their own problems, and nobody think about such issues like Taliban and Talibanism in Afghanistan. The third point is the lack of legitimacy in Kabul. Diplomacy, usually happens between recognized and legitimate governments. But the Taliban are not fully recognized internationally, and this makes diplomacy weaker, and Pakistan benefit from that. The fourth point is, regional development. Attacks by United States and Israel on Iran have made Pakistan more confident to continue its attack inside Afghanistan and pay less attention to diplomacy. And meanwhile, TTP gets also a lot of support, and they are becoming more dynamic inside Pakistan, give the reason that the Pakistan become more aggressive. Another point is the lack of strong, regional institutions, monitoring bodies of monitoring peace and security, even diplomacy and international law in our region. The lack of legitimacy is the reason that the national institutions, civil society and human rights and monitoring watchdogs, they have been disappeared. And in the region, we do not have any mechanism to cover or to monitor the diplomacy. And finally, let me also point the finally diplomatic effort between Qatar and Turkey, one in Doha and another in Istanbul, and they didn't achieve any positive results. And these efforts also, the lack of commitment between these countries to continue the diplomatic efforts is also one of the reasons that diplomacy is getting worse in our region.
Yeah, thank you. But overall, you think diplomacy and constructive dialogue is the way forward?
According to the international relations experiences, when the international community do not have coordination in resolving any conflict will be a very big challenge. Today, we have a very bad coordination among the international community, even at the international level. When we are talking about the Security Council level, they do not have any coordination about Afghanistan and about the future of Afghanistan. Some members of the Security Council even created relationship with non-legitimate power of Taliban in Afghanistan, for example, China in Russia. at the region, some member states like Central Asian countries have also created relationship with the Taliban. Meanwhile, many other international community organizations and states are against that. Such lack of coordination will badly damage any steps of diplomacy, because diplomacy is about, you know, coming together and making a common decision. That's, I think, is one of the main challenge. But still, as a international law, you know, experts in international relations, person who are teaching the international law, I will go for diplomacy, and diplomacy will never fail when the international community have the commitment.
Thank you, Dr. Sitez. Very constructive thoughts. Thank you. Mr. Khan, to you, your last points, please. And if you can stick to very brief way forward. Yeah.
So I was quite surprised by, some of the speakers who are still like very surprised on why Pakistan is attacking. And now there are like all sorts of like conspiracy theories being floated on why Pakistan is doing it. I was very clear in the beginning of my presentation that 130 civilians have been killed in 2026 alone, and 400 civilians, I'm not talking about military personnel, civilians in 2025 that have been killed by terrorists operating from Afghanistan soil. Now, is TTP operating from Afghanistan soil? Pakistan has given verifiable evidence to the international community that it is. There are various UN reports that come out after every few months that basically corroborate Pakistan's views. Pakistan has tried all sorts of diplomacy with the Afghan Taliban. There are so many forums that have been used: SCO, UN, bilaterals, trilaterals, Chinese, the Qataris, the Saudis, the Turks. The Afghan Taliban are not willing to curtail or cut off their ties from TTP. They basically think that if they attack TTP or take any action, TTP will join ISKP, which is also operating from Afghanistan soil. There are over 30 terrorist organizations that are operating from Afghanistan soil. The security situation in Afghanistan is an issue for the whole region. The Uzbekistan, they have an issue. Tajikistan has an issue. Pakistan has an issue. The Chinese have an issue. Everyone views Afghanistan from a security lens, and that is not supporting any regional integration or economic integration initiatives that all of these regional countries want to take. The Afghan Taliban basically value their relationship with the TTP a lot more than any economic integration programs that the regional countries are talking about. That is why Pakistan is attacking Afghan Taliban. They are eroding their capabilities so they cannot support the TTP anymore. They want to make it costly for the Afghan Taliban. So they take some sort of action or they need to be removed. That is the understanding that is there from the Pakistan side.
Um,
Now, out of this whole
Sheharyar Khan.
context, I don't know why we are looking for other reasons why Pakistan is doing this. It is very clear. It is glaringly clear why Pakistan is doing this, and this is why the diplomacy will fail. And I see in the next 6 months the situation deteriorating. Pakistan's
The war is
airstrikes
not the
or
solution.
cross-border strikes.
But Mr. Khan, we all know we are peace builders here, coming from that field. We know that war is not the solution. Killing is not the solution. What is the alternative path to curtail this kind of conflict and to mitigate and completely dismantle this armed conflict, which is causing innocents in both sides of the borders, Pakistan and Afghanistan, to be killed due to this particular conflict. So what has to be done? Because war is not the solution and killing is not the solution. I think we all agree on that point. What should be the alternative? Briefly, please.
So as long as the diplomacy is taking place, right now there is a back channel with China. Now, if there is this understanding that while these back channels are taking place, Pakistan will basically continue on losing its citizens or its armed forces or law enforcement, agencies, that is not something that is acceptable to Pakistan. And we also have to keep in mind that these diplomacy and these back channels and these discussions have been taking place for the last 4 years. And obviously, right now, the ball I see is in Taliban's court, whether they want to take some action or not. It is up to them. If they are legitimate rulers of that geographical location in which they are operating, then they have like certain obligations to the international community. And those obligations stem from the Doha Peace Agreement, in which they have clearly stated that they will not let Afghanistan be used for any terror proxies. Now, Pakistan is there to support them. Other regional countries are there to support the Afghan Taliban as well. But if they don't want to take any action, then what is the solution other than taking military operations to Afghanistan soil? Otherwise, we continue on losing civilians, and Pakistan is not willing to do that because of some mistakes Pakistan made in the 80s or 90s or in the 2000s. We can continue on talking about history, but right now it is next to impossible that Pakistan will basically be taking more casualties just because diplomacy is not working.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I'll get back to Dr. Sitez because we're already off time. To you, Ms. Ehsani, your last points, and please briefly about the way forward.
Well, Dr. Sitez mentioned and pointed out very, very important solutions, but looking ahead, the situation is fragile, and without escalation, it could become much more dangerous. The Taliban have acknowledged that they cannot fully control Afghanistan borders, and compared to Pakistan, they are much weaker in both equipment and personnel. They also lack control over their airspace and cannot respond effectively to hostile aircraft, leaving them highly vulnerable. Given this imbalance, the main losers in any prolonged conflict would be civilian and people of Afghanistan, mostly, who are already facing severe economic and humanitarian challenges. A military solution is neither realistic nor sustainable. The only viable path is de-escalation through dialogue, confidence building, and practical arrangement to reduce tensions. Ultimately, stability will depend on political, not military solutions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Ehsani. And Dr. Sitez, your last point, please. You wanted to have an intervention.
Yes, this narrative that many people are killed, civilian people killed in Pakistan, so the Pakistan do not have any other option than military intervention, is not according to the international law. The Pakistan should make a legal justification of their interferences into Afghanistan. That justification is lacking. That's a very important point according to the international law. The second, the political feedback to Mr. Sheharyar. Maybe it's a time for Pakistani politicians to think about the reasons why the Taliban come to the power and why the civilians are being killed in Pakistan because of these terrorist organizations. And maybe the question is very much clear, according to my presentation, from the Cold War situation up to now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you so much for a very insightful discussion about the causes of this particular conflict, the current dynamics, and the way forward. It was very insightful. This would be on YouTube channel, and everyone can watch, of course, at their own convenience. We'll get back to all of you, and we'll produce a very brief report from this webinar as well. We put it on our website for all those who are interested to follow. Again, as a follow-up to our activities, this is one of our initiatives, which is called Afghanistan and its regional landscape, and the webinars and all our conferences and events are associated with this particular initiative. Those who want to follow our work, our website constantly put the post by our wonderful fellows who are following the region very closely and writing the timely blogs and the timely op-ed about the current crisis around Afghanistan and its regional and its connection with the terrorism and all other security dynamics. So Follow our work on our website and on all our social media. And hope to see all of you in our next webinar and conferences, which is coming up in April soon. And thank you again to our wonderful panelists and guest speakers who have enlightened us with all their wonderful comments and observation about the current crisis. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.